Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a great night. Let's go ahead and we'll chit chat just a bit about this and that, and then play some games. Hopefully, have a little bit of fun with that. Let's turn down that lovely music. Hope you guys are having a good night. So, what I want to talk about today a little bit is nostalgia. I'm going to link a blog article from a friend. Death of nostalgia. I'm going to pull up a little image here that just kind of encapsulates why there's been a nostalgic, this nostalgic, constant nostalgia. I don't know. These cycles of nostalgia that have been going on now for decades. You know, if you look back at something like Happy Days in the 70s, there was this nostalgia for the 50s, or something like American Graffiti. There's this nostalgia for the 50s, and then you end up with a nostalgia for the 80s and a nostalgia for the 90s that comes back around. People liking a really bad Star Wars movie because it reminded them of movies they liked when they were a kid. You know, that's what we've got in these constant cycles. Let me go ahead and let's take a look at this funny little graphic here, because I do want to talk about it. It was a funny thing that I saw, and a couple of my friends on Twitter have talked about it too. This is just like a screen cap from 4chan. And it's like 1998 to 2008 was the best decade in human history. Try to change my mind, but I bet you can't. So we're going to go through all the points. My friends have already gone through this, but I'm going to do it here now because it just popped out to me. Internet already existed, but majority had no access. Maybe if you weren't in a first world country, like if you weren't in the United States, I could see that. If you were in like Brazil, definitely, majority didn't have access. But by 1998, pretty much everyone had the internet. I didn't know anyone at school who didn't have the internet. Maybe people that were like way low on the economic ladder didn't have the internet at all, but they probably had the internet at school on some level. So, everyone had access. Now, high-speed internet kind of started exploding in the 2000s, which is a different thing entirely to me. But internet culture was really already there. 80s movies and music wildly available. Well, that's not really nostalgia for the 2000s, is it? That's nostalgia for the 80s. Peace, stability, and a good economy. We did not have peace, stability, or a good economy. It was the Bush years. So we had the beginning of endless wars, which we've had 20 years worth of wars. Stability, not really. We had a huge housing bubble and a burst that completely destabilized the economy. We had gas prices ballooning out of control. This was really after 2008 that they started really exploding. But you had fluctuating gas prices. You had just everything was unstable. You had people losing work in droves after 9/11. All kinds of things. Gay rights established, but not main culture yet. Well, this is a really weird point. It's like gay rights were great, but gays weren't everywhere up in your face destroying everything. They were for me back then, but I was at a university. I was attending university and teaching in a university, so not really for me. Kazoo, Emule, etc. gave you all the music, movies, and prawn you wanted. So things like LimeWire, this is a weird thing to be nostalgic for. It's like getting pornography off of piracy services or things like LimeWire, right? I don't even know what else to say about that, except like that's kind of sick to say like, oh, I have nostalgia for stealing people's music and stealing games and stealing pornography and not paying for it. And then another thing with porn. Independent porn studios existed. It wasn't just one company controlling everything with different names on it. Like, that's exactly what it is now, though. It's not one company. It's a billion independent people doing OnlyFans and stuff like that. But again, it's weird to be nostalgic for porn when you could literally just search the internet for any porn that you ever wanted from the past and have it, going all the way back to like, I don't know, ancient Egypt or something. ICQ was a thing. ICQ was in the 90s, and then it was pretty much dead by 2000. No one used ICQ after about I used it in junior high, Facebook was not a thing. Facebook started in like 2004, I think, 2005. Facebook was a thing. MySpace began to become a thing. It's just social media, Michael Jackson's still alive. He didn't do anything. And The Simpsons are still funny. That's the silliest one. At that point, when you get to that one, you're like, that has to be a troll. The Simpsons were not funny. Simpsons were not funny from 1998 on. The first 10 seasons were funny. And then after that, everybody went to Futurama or went to other shows, and it became really unfunny. It became like a huge joke how bad The Simpsons was in the 2000s. So I laugh at this little thing because, the joke is always there can't be any aughts nostalgia because everything from 1997 on is just the same thing. So if I look at the music, when I was in a university, and the big music was things like pop punk, which started in the early mid 90s or blew up in the early mid 90s with things like Green Day, So a lot of people were into pop punk. Well, that wasn't really special in the 2000s. It was just a continuation in the 1990s. You had all the metal. Like, metal really hasn't developed much since the early 2000s, other than like power. Like, you had this kind of new wave of power metal happen where you had these faster bands like Dragon Force, and then just now everything sounds like a third-rate Dragon Force, which is kind of sad. So things haven't really progressed. In any musical style I can think of, there's been no progression. I think the only exceptions would maybe be electronic music in some ways. But even then, like, if you listen to something like Aphex Twin from the 80s and 90s or whatever, it is not that different from the stuff that's made today. It's really not. It's pretty it's pretty much the same, you have everything at your fingertips and can experience it as you wish. It's no longer something wistful and only in your memories. Yeah, it's just there. You can just experience it now. That's kind of where we're at. There's other reasons why the culture just kind of stopped after 1997. And by 2010, we are in like a, constant spinning wheels of culture, partially due to the way advertising and marketing works. I've done a deep dive on this. I have a video that I actually forgot to upload, so I'll upload it maybe tomorrow and put it up. Brandon's right. He's confusing the nostalgia from his personal life with the world in general being better. He's like, I remember liking life during this time, therefore it was better. It's like, it was not better for those of us who had to deal with it. University people talking about how woke universities are. It was the same 20 years ago. It really was. And I was at a fairly conservative public university compared to something like Berkeley. But it really hasn't changed that much. It's just become more prevalent. So, I think about this kind of stuff. With marketing, you get this thing where all marketing is directed towards a consumer, and it's to cue into their pre-existing desires and tastes as much as possible and their pre-existing experiences. There's never anything novel presented to somebody, other than maybe like, it's pretty rare. Maybe it's like, here's this thing that brushes your teeth in 15 seconds or something like that. But there's so little progress as far as art goes that is in any way original or new or novel in any way compared to decades past. Decades past, you had scenes explode. You had whole different new things happening that were different from other things. And now it's just kind of different variations of everything that was present in about the year 2000, in almost every single variety of music I could think of. There was a big band revival that happened about 2000, and jazz hasn't changed. There's been no change in the style of jazz in 20 years. And before that, there was huge change going all the way up through the end of the 80s. There was huge changes all the time. Jazz was very dynamic form. And by the end of the 90s, it settled into we're playing bebop revival and big band revival stuff, but like really advanced technique. It's just big band stuff, but better than it was back in the 40s and 50s. Stuff like Big Fat Band or I forgot her name now, but there's a lot of that stuff. There's just been so little original anything that's come out in terms of music, in terms of art. I mean, even movies. Like we've watched like 20 Marvel movies in a row. The Marvel boom just kind of kept booming because there was just nothing else anyone was interested in. It's kind of sad. So anyway, yeah. So I bring this up because, eventually most of the people don't really have a memory of things being different. Like the 9/11 and post 9/11 worlds are very different. I'm contemplating traveling back to Texas to see my grandmother because she's in her 90s, and my grandfather died last year about this time. We were at his funeral 1 year ago, and so I want to go see her. But I'm just like, me and my wife are like, we're so dreading having to get our children on a plane and travel on a plane. And I'm like, I remember the 90s though. Traveling on a plane was fun. Traveling on a plane was not a hassle. It was a tiny bit of a hassle. But compared to today, it was not a hassle. It's like you showed up at the airport. You could show up at the airport 15 minutes before your flight left and be on the flight. Because security involved throwing your keys in a cup, walking through a metal detector, picking your keys and your knife up. I always carried a knife on a plane. I always carried like a pocket knife. You were allowed to carry knives. You could, maybe if you had a little bit extra time, you'd stop and get some Burger King to take on the plane with you or something. And then you'd get on the plane and hang out and listen to your Walkman or read a book, and then you were there, and you'd get off the plane, and there was your bag, and it was really easy. You didn't have this whole like everybody had to be screened 100 times. You had to wait, like me waiting in line with two small children for an hour for them to like look at, for basically a TSA worker to pretend to look at my passport or whatever, or my driver's license. And then be like, what's your name? And be like, my name is right there. He's like, he just has a script he has to do. In case somebody trips up and is like, what is my name? It's a fake passport. What you got there in your bag? Are you taking free shampoo samples on the plane? No. That could be C4. It's like the post 9/11 world as far as travel is just awful. So we're not looking forward to doing that again. But yeah, it's a different world. And so eventually people are not going to remember the better times. They're going to remember better times in their lives, like Handsome Orc said, but not better times, because the times have really not changed. We had the same war for 20 years. We had the same culture for 20 years. We've had the same uniparty stuff for 20 years. We've had the same like politics for 20 years, really. Like nothing's really changed. Anyway, let me take a look at the chat and then we'll play some games. I'm sorry, yeah, Brandon Kahn is the one who said it. He's confusing nostalgia from his personal life with the world in general being better. I think Penny Arcade has a comic about this years ago. You have everything in your fingertips. That's what Handsome Orc said. Yeah. What's the takeaway? It says, to me, sci-fi stories are just nostalgia for when adventure was a pursuit into itself. Yeah. You would do things because they were exciting. Nowadays people don't do this. I wrote an article about this on DVS Press on my blog website. Basically, the people who settled America are quite different from the people who inherited that. So the people who settled America had to have a low desire to maintain their current social bonds. Hence, they were willing to go out into the wilderness and settle land that was basically vacant. You had nomadic tribes that maybe lived in the area, but they didn't settle the land. So in order to leave your family behind in Europe and come to America, leave your family behind in Ireland and come to America, I think at one point, like 1/4 of the Norwegian population immigrated to the United States or North America, which is crazy to think about. But in order to do that, you have to have a high tolerance for severing family bonds. Well, eventually the settling is done. You filled everything out, and then you settled, and then you produced children, and you're passing on the same value of adventure to them, but there's nowhere else to adventure to. So everybody just kind of ends up as an atomized individual after about 100 years without any kind of sense of like what home is supposed to be. Whereas, the poor medieval peasants that got left behind in Europe have that. It's like, my family's always lived in this village, or my family's British and we've always been British. There's a sense that things are going back in time and that you're part of that. Good morning from the north of Sweden. Yes, good morning. I don't know how to say good morning in Swedish. I can say it in German. It's like Guten Morgen. Disney CEO says he doesn't think the company's right or left leaning. Of course he's going to say that, but you just judge them by their actions. I still think that time period is one of the best, but it's so strange that things started taking a turn after 2008. Well, to me, the 2000s, here's my actual aughts nostalgia. Video games were really good in the 2000s. They were really, really good in the 2000s for a bunch of reasons. But by 2008, you actually had nostalgia for past video games coming in. Things like you had the Wii Virtual Console was a huge hit because people remembered how much they loved playing NES and SNES games. And then, things continued from there. So up through maybe 2008, up through the early stages of the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era, you had development of games. Games were progressing. Games were developing their gameplay. They weren't just getting better graphically. Yes, they were getting better graphically, but their gameplay was getting better until at a certain point you settled into a set of gameplay modes that if you make a game, you just kind of cut and paste a set of gameplay mechanics, and that's what you do. There's not a lot of originality or experimentation with games anymore, especially not, quote, AAA games, the big games. So, we had so many CRPGs back in the 90s and the 2000s, and not just stuff like Morrowind or like Daggerfall, but you had stuff like Heroes of Might and Magic. There's a whole series of Heroes of Might and Magic games, which were just great, fun, tactical RPGs. They're still fun to go back and play. All these RPGs on PS1, PS2. And then games kind of become frozen. And so if you go back and play Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the first Call of Duty 4, it's pretty much the same game as the current Call of Duty that comes out, gameplay-wise. Very little's changed. Just little variations here or there. They developed the game to a point, and that's kind of where it stuck. And it's the same thing with a bunch of other things, right? Like you get Dragon Age Origins kind of had the Baldur's Gate stuff, and then that just kind of stuck, and they haven't really, they dumbed it down a little bit, and then it kind of stuck there. You had gameplay modes like the standard JRPG mode. Final Fantasy was always experimenting with its game systems, and always has, right? And I've gone over this right from the very beginning. Final Fantasy 2, new game mechanics were put in the game, and every single game had different game mechanics. Well, now it's like JRPG, people have, they use RPG Maker to make an RPG, and I actually have RPG Maker, by the way, because I got it for like $5 or something. I'm like, why not? I can make a 1-hour RPG for someone to play through. That just has really standard RPG mechanics. Turn-based battles, menus. No other thoughts. I remember when Final Fantasy 12 came out, I was like, oh, it doesn't have turn-based battles. And then like later I played it, I'm like, this game is awesome. Like, I love what they did with the gameplay mechanics of Final Fantasy 12. So video games kept it going. But by 2008, they pretty much settled into what they were doing. And MMOs in the aughts were amazing. You had EverQuest. You had Dark Age of Camelot. You had Final Fantasy 11. You had World of Warcraft. You had EverQuest 2. You had the first 2 World of Warcraft expansions. I think Wrath of Lich King was 2009. I don't remember exactly, but those first 2 expansions were killer. Wow, those were great times to play an MMO. And then you had even Eastern MMOs like Lineage 2 if you were into Grindfests, or Aeon, kind of the same, but the mechanics were always being pushed. I remember when Aeon came out, it was like the mechanics were just so cool. The kind of flying combat mechanics. And then everything just kind of became WoW clones after about 2010. When Warhammer Online, when EA took over, I think it was FuncoSoft, and turned Warhammer Online into a WoW clone, like they really tried to push all the mechanics to be exactly like World of Warcraft, to be the formula that's tried and true. You want to give people a familiar experience, became the driving factor. Same thing with books. We want to give people a familiar experience. Movies, we want to give people a familiar... It all became about familiar experiences after 2010 in games, but it had been that way with movies and books prior to that too. Yeah, year 0 kicked in. It'd be floundering in the job market. Couldn't advance in corp world without a degree, and then I got one and the ladder up and disappeared. Now I'm forcibly retired. Yeah, I'm sorry for that, Bradford, but a lot of people are like that, unfortunately. I'm nostalgic for the practical effects in commercials. The Nestea Snowman. Yeah, the creativity in commercials went away too because it became all about targeting towards the individual. That kind of reflexively goes back to where the ads that people pay for at the Super Bowl are really boring. Oh, Ready Player One, nostalgia became its own genre. Yeah, Ready Player One to me is unreadable. Ready Player Two is even worse. That's true at my college. Teachers who were right to the political center got bullied by their colleagues. Wasn't the point to destroy the culture so people are demoralized and programmable? I think to a certain extent, yeah. That stuff goes way back with like Marxist revolutions too. You have to rewrite the culture so that people can be programmed correctly. It views man as like a not just a programmable being, but a perfectible being. If we just change what we put into him, if we change his inputs, then he'll be perfect. But it doesn't really work that way. Who here is old enough that when you were a child, they would let you go into the cockpit and the pilots would give you a tour and lesson about how the plane operates? Yeah, I remember that. Not anymore. Now you don't even get to see the cockpit. Christopher Nolan is one of the few directors making original movies these days. I'd say they're very classically inspired, though. Flying was wonderful when I was a kid. Yeah, post 9/11 become so horrible, I'd rather drive several hours than deal with flying for a couple of hours. Same. To me, anything that is like 1,000 miles away or closer, it's a drive. Because it's going to take the same amount of time to fly there, and you're not. At least if you drive, you have a car. It's like we were going to go down to my wife's cousin's wedding in June, but COVID stuff happened, and it's like, oh well, we could fly down there for this amount of money. And I'm like, we should just drive. Well, it's 8 hours to drive there. I'm like, yeah, so it's going to take 8 hours to fly there, and then we'll have to rent a car. We might as well take the 8 hours to drive there. And then we'll have our car there. It would take us, because we'd have to drive to Fresno or Sacramento, drive 2 hours, get on the plane, fly down to San Diego, and rent a car. It would cost so much more, and we wouldn't even be saving time. It would take 6 hours to take a 1 hour flight. I remember having a pocket knife in my bags as a teen. I forgot about it. It was a cheap knife. They made such a big deal about it. Yeah, now they didn't. Back then they didn't do it. I used to take a pocket knife on the plane every time. I used to put guns in my bags. Used to just be able to put a gun in your bag. Not in your carry-on bag, but in your checked baggage. You could just put guns in there and ammo. And it was fine. Now you had to, you had to tell them about it. And then after a while, it's like, it has to be in this locked case and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't help that the countries of the Anglosphere made deliberate efforts to erase ethnic identity by non-Anglos by settling Anglophone countries. Good morning in Swedish is close to German. Most languages here are closely related. God Morgen with a sharp R and a sharp G. God Morgen. That sounds good. Yeah, the 2000s was the peak of gaming in so many ways. No QTEs, no QuickTime events, no pay to win. Ever improving writing and gameplay mechanics, tons of creativity. Yeah. A good portion of the gaming innovation is coming from smaller developers. I agree, but most indie developers for a long time were just focused on nostalgia. Like, let's do another Metroidvania. Let's do another platformer. And now I'm starting to see a lot more cool innovation, but I think you're right. But for a long time, indies were only good because they were playing good gameplay mechanics that AAA refused to do. I remember playing Vagrant Story on PS1 and thinking the script and graphics were stunning and ahead of their time. Now I look for 32-bit games because the amazing graphics are a turnoff. Games in the 90s to aughts were made by those who grew up reading fantasy and playing D&D. Games made now are being made by those who grew up playing those games. Content twice removed. Yeah, it's kind of like soloing in heavy metal. So the original guys who played metal in the 70s and 80s grew up playing jazz and classical music, especially jazz. So Tony Iommi improvises solos and things like that. And I remember talking to someone like, all the solos he played tonight, none of them, did he forget them all? He's like, he never plays the same one every night. They're improvised because he's a blues and a jazz musician. Originally, they played jazz and blues and invented heavy metal, and they just carried that tradition with them. The solo is from jazz and it's improvised. You wouldn't write it. Then it became a thing where, like, you made constructed technical solos. It became its own thing, content twice removed. All right. Do you think there will ever be a right-leaning AAA game company that pushes for creative gameplay storylines and refuses to bend the knee to the SJW gen? I don't think so. I mean, maybe. I mean, who knows? I can't say for sure. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? But I think it's, you're probably more likely to see something like Ascend to be that kind of quality. Here we go. All right. Now, I'm going to show you something kind of cool on Adrenaline here. So one of the things I could do here is I can create a save state. I'm going to create a save state down here. And I can show you some bosses I played off stream real quick because I'm way ahead of the game. So basically what happens in this game is you discover that your floating continent is floating above the real world. Now we can go to settings and go up to, what state did we save? Let's do this one to start, I think. 1:09 a.m. Well, I was playing late into the night. Load state. Then we can go back to where we were. I cannot stand the chattel feeling of all of us waddling through airport security. I remember as a kid, the security officer just opened my father's pants right in front of everyone. Yeah. So you're inside a living tree. This is the first game that had a living tree in it, which I thought was pretty cool. Back attack! Oh no! I'll just show the boss and then we'll load another thing. Hitting him with a bell. Ouch! My characters are so much stronger on my current save here. There we go. Yeah, I hate airport security. I hate trying to get on a plane. I hate trying to get off a game. I hate it all. Cure everybody up. I wonder if this like refills your... There we go. Let's go straight to the boss. So one of the things I love about the kind of macro or meta of this game is the different job systems. So here's the skeleton boss. My son actually beat this guy for me. Ah, the power of darkness is a thing of beauty, a black tapestry of chaos. A tapestry on which I shall paint an all-encompassing nocturne. With this fortress, Argus' soldiers, and the power of darkness, I will rule the world. Time to die! We don't even know who this guy is. He's just like a skeleton. Just hit terrain. The Geomancer just like auto does spells. It's pretty cool. Do arrow. Oh, I'm out of mana for that one. Guard. We don't even need right-wing game company. We just need ones that don't go all on political crusades for insane ideas. Yeah, you just need normal people. Yeah, you don't have to go crazy. Normal people. Yeah, my son beat this guy basically on his own. This guy's super easy, I guess. I was like, oh man, he's gonna be so hard. My knight is so weak. He doesn't hit for anything. Terrain and... If he has the darkness, can you cast magic missile at it? He does seem like he belongs in Pirates of the Caribbean. No build up to this boss character. Yeah, I mean, some people mentioned that like he stole the he stole the living tree and was floating around the desert with it. And he had captured or mind controlled all of the guards at this castle. And that's it. This is before the days of like complicated Final Fantasy stories. You don't get that till the next game, Final Fantasy IV. So I like games from Japan. The politics are generally not inserted. Yeah. There's a quote from Schmidt, and I'm trying to remember it. I think I saved it on my phone. But basically his thing was like, strict divisions of the political kind of cease to be meaningful when culture and the state are intersecting each other. Which is that everything becomes political at a certain point. Like at a certain point, once everything is intersecting each other, like once we're all intersecting each other, and then the state is omnipresent. Everything can be the state. At least potentially everything could be an active state. But he defines acts of state as things that are specifically non-legal. They're like above the legal level. So like you have laws that are enforced, but the state does things that are not laws which are enforced. Rather, they do things which are like momentary necessities. So like the art of the state would be, things like going to war. Deciding to do things, proactively. That's what a state does. How was Final Fantasy VII? I just grabbed the remake free through PSN, and it's going to be my first... Oh, the remake's good. Remake's good. I've streamed it last year, and it's good. It's very good. I saw that it was free. I already have it, I bought it day of because it's good. If you want to play the original, it's popular for a good reason. Oh, I will now free the people held captive within me and return them to where they belong. This is the tree talking to you. Then I will go back to the living woods once again. Someone says that Japanese, they do have it. It's just more reasonable. Yeah, it probably has to do with their own Overton window, like what's acceptable discourse and what's not. There's a game called The Sinking City. They virtue signaled so hard they accidentally made the KKK into the good guys. I am back where I belong. Thank you for your help, young ones. Should have like a tree board voice. Here, take this. Use it when the power of darkness stands in your way. Berries. You saved the living woods, thank you! Obtained Fang of Wind. We have to get 4 different fangs and then we can like unlock the last level. In other words, their politics usually aren't straight up bad. There are exceptions at times, though, I'd imagine. I will now sleep until the wounds that Hyde inflicted upon me heal themselves. For 1,000 years I shall sleep, and none shall be able to enter these woods until I awaken. Young ones, it is no coincidence that the floating continent was born 1,000 years ago, where the darkness engulfed the world. And that you have been chosen to become the warriors of the light 1,000 years later. Young ones, you must leave the floating continent and go to the world of darkness, the surface world. The surface world? You must make haste. If you do not go now, it will be 1,000 years until you may go again. Like, we're going to be 1,000 years old? Sweet. Goodbye. Goodbye and good luck. All right. All right. So now I can just reload a different state. So there's that boss. And we'll reload this state, which is the... this is the last boss of the floating continent in this cave, I think. Is that it? No, maybe he was the skeleton guy was the last boss of the floating continent. Anyway, you go back to the king and he gives you something that turns your ship into an airship, and then you could fly down here. Yeah, this is at the bottom part. And what do we fight here? We have an Overton people, and it's way to the left. Oh yeah, so there's a boss here that maybe it was the last boss. You're supposed to use a scholar, so you can change jobs, basically classes. You're supposed to use a scholar because he has Libra, and he can just tell you what the weak spot is. Turns out you didn't need to do that, and it's a terrible job, so I skipped it. Because White Mage has Libra anyway. So you could just do that anyway. Display the weak points. But you also have a good class that can heal. Instead of Scholar. Scholar's just not a very good class. The reason the U.S. needs explicit anti-SJW entertainment companies is because we have many anti-American posterity entertainment companies, while Japan doesn't, compared to the U.S. I think that's probably a fairly accurate statement. You know. But, I mean, there's a lot of pressure being exerted from the West on Japanese companies. Like, Sony closed... what studio they closed? I have the game. I have Gravity Rush on here. It's a great game. If you've never played Gravity Rush and you have a Vita, definitely play Gravity Rush. It's an excellent game. I actually played Final Fantasy VII Original recently. It was my first Final Fantasy game at all. It was okay, but obviously it's hard to judge modern day standards. I'm disappointed with Sephiroth as a bad guy. Yeah, I think it's a little overrated, and people have a very nostalgic view of it, but it's still a very good game. The gameplay's a little simple compared to, say, Final Fantasy V and VI and even VIII. It is now your turn. You must merge the light within you with the one with the water crystal. Only then will the crystal regain its true light and banish the darkness from this world. Then time will flow once more. Oh yeah, time is frozen on the bottom continent. Thank you for the $5. Thanks for staying bright in all the world's mess. Well, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Oh no! Yeah, the Final Fantasy VII Remake is really pretty good, though. I really do like the gameplay. It's got great action RPG gameplay. And it's just a beautiful graphical game and great to look at. A lot of fun to play. I am Kraken, tasked by Lord Zande to steal the light from the crystal of water, and you are all about to die. It's a Lovecraft beast. It's a child of Yog Sothoth. There he is. This guy died really, really easily, if I remember right. See, I don't really have to do a lot of strategies, like with this team setup. It's just pretty much two dudes who can, like, wreck with their physical attacks, and then... oh, yeah, except Clint's dead. We're probably going to have to use a... we have to heal up with this. So, yeah, anyway, we might lose this fight, but... I think he has a blood sword, so... Let's see here. Phoenix down. I'm gonna do Akira. Now that I finished Final Fantasy VII Original, I just need to wait for Final Fantasy VII Remake to come to PC. Any day now. Any day now. It's going to be the best version of it, too, probably. Did you play Outer Worlds ever? And if so, what did you think? I didn't. I thought it was actually a pretty good commentary in corporatism, and I like most Obsidian games. It was written well. I haven't played it. Terrain, and then we'll go magic. Well, I'll tell you what's taken so long with Final Fantasy VII Remake is they really wanted to release it for the PS5. There's Square Enix has a certain relationship with Sony, and that's part of that relationship. Is they wanted to re-release it specifically for the PS5. Whirlpool's gonna miss, of course. And so after they do that with that exclusive content where you can be Yuffie or whatever, then you'll get to see it. Come to the PC. And you'll probably get that extra content on the PC. You know, I still don't have a PS5, but it's something that's like it'd be nice to be able to get that before Final Fantasy 16 comes out, because it's going to be stuck on the PS5 for a while. Even if I'm not particularly interested in the PS5. Like, there's no reason to buy a PS5 now. I can't think of any reason to buy one. There's no, like, killer games for the PS5 that I can think of at all. People are like, Demon's Souls. I'm like, Demon's Souls is a PS3 game. Again, we're just in this reboot phase in games now. It's like, that's just, you can play it on the PS3 right now. In fact, maybe I'll stream it for the PS3. Let's see, do we need... I think we just need regular cure. Blind, we can probably take one more attack. So yeah, the Geomancer will cast like random magic according to what's around you. So it's like earth magic and stuff, kind of randomly. Ooh, cover. Auto cover. That worked pretty good. I hated Yuffie. It's bad enough she stole my Matria, but she didn't have the decency to place it back in the right order. It took me 30 minutes to reorganize it. I wish I could have kicked her. Or my materia. There we go. He's dead. Cthulhu is dead. They fouled up the aesthetics of the remake for Demon's Souls anyways, in my opinion. Yeah, I could see that. Like, what they should do is just release it on PC and let the PC community make the best version of it, just like with Skyrim. The best version of Skyrim is just like a modded 32-bit original Skyrim. I know because I run it. It runs on 3 monitors and 6400 by 1080. And boy, is it immersive. 100% agree on PS5. There's nothing on it that's compelling enough to buy one. And I have so many free and purchased games on the PS4 to play still. Yeah. And it's not even like you're going to see a big graphical upgrade. Like some of the games will run at 60 FPS instead of 30. For a lot of games, that's not going to matter that much. You must take this. The power of water. Or like run in 4K at 30 FPS. That's, that is, I mean, it is a graphical upgrade for sure. But like, you remember the PS3 to PS4 generation just wasn't as big an upgrade as everyone thought it was going to be. And this one isn't as big an upgrade as people think it's going to be either. The increase of graphical fidelity, it requires exponentially more computing power to get a little bit more graphical fidelity now. Promise me you will banish the darkness and restore peace to the world. I remember my mother didn't want to show me Alex Jones as a kid. Kind of like he was rated M. It's odd to see him enter the mainstream now. Boy, you must have been a kid really recently. It's like when I was a kid, it was like Rush Limbaugh. Don't let your kid hear Rush Limbaugh. Turn that AM radio off. An earthquake. We have to get out of here. Lydia, watch out. I mean, Rush Limbaugh coined a lot of the terms that we use now. Him and Michael Savage. Most people just lift Michael Savage's shtick from the 90s and 2000s and then pretend it's their original thing. But yeah, Rush Limbaugh created words like feminazi. He used to do things you can never get away with now. So he would, in the middle of a call, if he had a caller on and he didn't like him, he would cut off the call and be like, I aborted that call. It never happened. We didn't have a call because I aborted it. The call never existed. I just aborted that call. If it wasn't a real call, I aborted it. It hadn't yet developed into an actual conversation yet, so I just aborted it. Do you think ancient philosophy has any worth in modern day, or if people in society change so much it doesn't have anything of it? I think it has huge amounts to give us, massive amounts. There's nothing new under the sun. Especially, I mean, if you're looking at something like Aristotle is still informative today. In fact, we'd have a lot less problems if more people had read, Aristotle or even Plato. Plato's a little more dense, and because it's presented, a lot of Plato stuff is presented as dialogues. It's presented dramatically. I do this too. I mean, I present philosophy through a story, and Plato kind of does that as well. So you have to kind of take the roundabout way to do it. With Plato, with a lot of Plato stuff, but I think people would have much better heads on their shoulders if they actually paid attention to ancient philosophy and the pre-Socratics. We've been asleep for 3 straight days, and the world has changed much in that span. No one here remembers having their time stopped. It's as if it never happened. Maybe more like young teen. It's okay that you're younger than me. It's just funny. Anyway, so that's that boss fight. Now I can load where I was, which is down here. I'd like improvements to the AI, but I can't really fault them for making the remake as faithful as possible. Punk rock was really quickly co-opted by non-punk ideas. The Ramones, who really invented punk rock, I wouldn't call them conservative, but they were very anti-communist for sure. I was exploring this town. So here's the town that you wake up in. And all the darkness will be lifted. There was this sea of darkness you had to wander around in to find islands. Now I have to find a key to the sewers from someone, and then I can go into the sewers and fight a guy. Oh, maybe this person has the key. One of our village legends says how 4 warriors will appear to banish the overflowing light and darkness. Uh-oh. Who are these guys? Woo! That's us! What's that all about? Oh, the peanut gallery? Those old men think they're the 4 legendary warriors. Inconceivable! So I think the big cultural divide, I'm gonna put the big divide in context real quick for people. So the big divide is not really conservative or liberal anymore. Oh, I can still cross this on a canoe. That's good. But I can't get on my ship. Let's see what these monsters are like here. Oh my, a dragon. Let's see what we got here. Johnny Ramone was conservative. He feuded with Joey Ramone, who was very liberal. I think they were all pretty anti-communist, though. But yeah, I've heard that too. The Misfits actually leaned very far right too, unbeknownst to most people. Especially, who am I thinking of? Jerry Only. Especially as time went on, they became way more right-wing. Communism and punk rock don't make any sense together. Tell like Green Day and bands like that. Are you looking for the crystal? You should look for Goldor. His manor is in the marshlands to the south. Mickey Mouse's copyright runs out next year. Do you think Disney's going to try and change the laws to extend it again? I think what they'll try to do is keep it in perpetual lockdown through trademark. They'll make the shape. They're going to basically press that the image of Mickey Mouse himself is emblematic of Disney Corporation, cannot be separated from the brand as such, and therefore anyone using the image of Mickey Mouse is violating trademark. It will be done through trademark is my prediction. Old Man Gil has the key. Where's Old Man Gil? Let's find Old Man Gil. So, you know, you won't be able to call it Mickey Mouse because Mickey Mouse is a trademark. And they'll say, well, even the image of Mickey Mouse is also a trademark. So you can't make Mickey Mouse cartoons because his image is trademarked. His image can't be separated from the brand of Disney. At least that's what it's going to be. All right, so this is locked. I have magic keys, but they won't work to open that. Old Man Gil is somewhere. Negative XP is the last remaining punk. That was something about EverQuest, man. You had to call the raid because people would die so much they'd start de-leveling. It's like half the raid would de-level and you'd have to quit and everybody have to go out and level again. Did I go in here or not? I don't know if I did or not. Let's check in here. Green Day is soft rock. Who's that? What do you want? We need to get into the sewers. We're looking for some Levigrass shoes. You got a death wish or something? That place is Monster Central, and it smells bad too. But we need Levigrass shoes to find the fourth crystal. Crystal? Are you the four warriors of legend? Oh, here's these guys again. What? The four warriors? But we are the chosen ones. Those four claim they are too. They say they're going into the sewers. Then we'll beat them to the punch. Go, go, go to the sewers, gentlemen. Tally-ho! I'll show you the way into the sewers myself. Follow me. The difference between left and right is low status by nature and desires unwarranted materials, goods, and those who believe in natural law. Yeah, that's an interesting way. I'd say the current one is between the imperial and the local, or imperialist and localist. Imperials, large mega corporations, allied with the state, large scale living, so like urban living versus local living, true localism. Sure, that's so cities, right? People who live in cities don't really live in communities. There's no localities in cities anymore. There's very few anyways. It used to be that, I lived in El Segundo. El Segundo kind of had a little culture, Oh. Ooh, get some of these greens. Yeah, El Segundo kind of had a culture, but you don't really have local culture anymore. It's more like the city doesn't even have a culture. It's just the homogenized American megaculture in every city. And there's very little to distinguish cities. Even weird places like Portland are kind of part of this homogenized American megacity thing. What do I do on this island? I'm hoping there'd be something up here before I go into the sewers. Ooh, black cowl. There's a couple things here. Thief gloves, okay. I think I already bought a black cowl. I feel bad. Oh, this is lower. No one can wear this black cowl, apparently. Alright. Whatever. So yeah, the big divide is really imperialist versus like the mega big. Technology and automation will change everything. I mean, it has changed everything. It will change everything more. Probably. Mexico, all the tiny political parties form alliances that form new larger parties. That's showing what might happen in the U.S. with third and fourth parties. Yeah, that's what happens within the two-party system. Anything where you have a first-past-the-post voting system, you're going to end up with things like that. That's just how those things work. So first past the post just means like, whoever gets the most votes just wins. You will always end up with a two-party system with that kind of electoral system. So a lot of people thought, like, how can we reform the electoral system to get rid of that problem? But, yeah, the imperial homogenizes by necessity to make it easier to assimilate subject populations into the system. Yeah. It's an empire over a bunch of atomized individuals. Okay, can't go over the edge. See if there's any sparklies over here. Oh no! Something's attacking me! I find quite a bit of cosmopolitan commentators when reviewing, say, Stephen King, actually find the locality of a tight-knit and high-trust community creepy and unsettling. That's the Imperial. Everything is directed between the individual and the state, or the individual and some larger organization like a corporation. Where you have HR departments that buffer everything rather than rather than people having high trust. So the localist, it establishes its own local culture. People know each other. Companies are local. Things are bought and sold locally. There's human relationships between people. It's built from the bottom up with families. That's the difference between the local and the... I'll do retaliate. That's the difference between the local and the imperial. So that's the big thing. And of course, like, that means cities and the rural environments are kind of at odds with each other because... Not because of something special about cities, but because cities are full of atomized individuals, and you only get smaller communities where people have to know each other, out in some other way. But even then, I think what we might end up having is a lot more intentional living. So people will choose to live in a locality where there's lots of people like them. And then they work online in other places. It's going to be interesting. One of the things I loved about Japan is they have a zillion little family-owned businesses. Yeah, and a ton of restaurants. They have a big foodie culture. So, people have their favorite local restaurant that's like in their neighborhood. Like they go down to the street and walk a block over to the restaurant, and they know the person who runs the restaurant. It's like a little hole-in-the-wall kitchen, and then they can have... And the restaurants specialize in things like, this restaurant does udon, and this restaurant does sushi, and, this restaurant does teriyaki or something. So, like, your local restaurants. You know where your food is coming from, even if you're not making it. You have a relationship with that person who's making your food. And in America, we'd be like, man, they must spend so much money eating out, but it turns out it's actually pretty cheap to eat at a restaurant in Japan if it's like one of these local, eateries. I want to do a review of Food Wars, because that's an element of the culture that's kind of there, is this big, giant, kind of corporate restaurant view, and then the main character, Yukihara Soma. He's from a little diner. He's from one of these little local diners where everybody knows each other and everybody's friends. Let's kill this Darklegs. And so there's a certain care with that versus, a kind of a faceless relationship with customers. There's something interesting about the culture. I wonder if Biden will actually be the last traditional establishment president. Well, considering, by this time next year, Kamala Harris, a Canadian, half Jamaican, half Indian Canadian, will be the president of the United States, I'd say so. It's the least traditionalist thing I could think of. Back attack. What do you think is the reason a country like Japan has such a high trust society? I have this theory that's part of it is due to their upbringing. I think part of it's upbringing. I think there's a trust of the state too. Like, people are very willing to do. Their school is. We're very. Now, I'm a homeschool guy, right? Let's do Hosanna. Oh, no, I did it on the wrong guy. I'm a homeschool guy. So, I don't really have a lot of trust in the American public education system, but it's not really like that in Japan. And the education system isn't totally politicized because it's viewed as a cultural institution. There's just a respect for people's own cultures. Like the culture of a locality, too, including, local deities, like local kami, Shinto stuff. Like, all that stuff is part of their culture and their upbringing, And they are genetically similar, too. People make a big deal out of that, but I'm like, I don't know if that matters as much as... I mean, it probably matters in that you see other people that look kind of like you, and so you immediately think of them as, I guess, well, like you, but... I don't know. The Japanese state doesn't hate its nation. Yeah. Japan is almost 100% Japanese. That's the reason. But the thing is that culture and ethnicity go together in almost every circumstance. Because culture is transmitted through family, and family is genetic. So, Irish culture is transmitted by Irish families. Having somebody come from Africa and then be, quote, be Irish makes no sense because they don't have Irish values or Irish genetics. They don't have either one. You have to be part of that culture to have any of the values. Cat claws. I don't know if these are good. They throw so many claws at you, but look how much they lower your attack. Your attack goes from 206 to 24. It's awful. I want to move to Japan just because my ex-wife would never think to look for me there. Did I just come here? I don't remember. Nope. Here's a cutscene. What time is it? Probably need to... Yeah, we need to... After this, we need to think about killing the stream. Og, help us! Oh, it's those poor guys. Hey, they're in trouble. We must aid them. Japan does have a serious atomization problem, but it's not yet irreparable. Yeah, you should look up hikikomori. So this is a phenomenon where people become total shut-ins in urban Japan. They don't leave their apartment, or they only leave at night to go to the convenience store to buy Mountain Dew or something. It's a serious problem. People will disappear for long periods of time, like weeks or months, just becoming shut-ins. What we might think of in the West as going total neckbeard or something like that. Hikikomori. And it's, I don't know, it's a big problem. People aren't really sure where it comes from. Hit him with the bell. Here we go. Punch him! He does so much damage now. 2,400 damage. 60% of the Japanese do not trust the diet to solve problems. That's better than, at most, 10% of Americans having a positive opinion on Congress, I guess. By the way, why was there no stream on Saturday? I did have a stream on. Oh no, I was playing my my mother-in-law's funeral. So yeah, we were doing her funeral on Saturday. I forgot I had John and Jesse, and I'm having Brian Niemeyer on Saturday. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Thought we were done for. We thought we were the warriors from the legend, but I guess we weren't. Oh well, that's settled then. Hee ha 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 ha. We advise you to head back to town for your own safety. Good old Clint. So yeah, I worked up a little Baroque set. I may record it, but I just haven't had time to do it. So yeah, I may record the little Baroque set I played. Played about 30, 40 minutes of music. Worked it up. I was like, as I was going through my music of yore, I was like, man, most of this music sucks. You know, a little bit of separation made me realize, like, I just hated most of my repertoire that I was playing in graduate school and after that. It was just, yeah, I appreciate that. Zimamaru. But, you know, I might record some of them, and then it'll just be, I might release it to the public domain, just like public domain Baroque music. Beards don't hit back. Guess we're getting too old for this. We'll just stay here and rest up a bit. Suck in the ambiance. Thanks again, eh? So yeah, maybe do some... As I'm going through it, I'm like, I ended up throwing out everything that wasn't Baroque. I played only Baroque guitar music. With one exception. I played one kind of contemporary piece by Reginald Smith Brindle that was based on a Renaissance Vihuela piece. Hammer. So I did that. Double Diamond Bell. Why not? Ooh, another secret. What's in here? Kaiser knuckles. They keep giving you these, like, knuckles, but they, like, if you put them on, like, you get really bad attack, you know? Sonic and Knuckles. That's funny. Impact claws. No. What you got to do is take these off. Because they're bad. Look how much harder you're gonna hit. It's just a fun thing. If you play Monk, don't put the claws on. Don't do it. Power bracers. Ooh. Sweet. Poison dagger. I don't think I can use that. Evening, gents. Alright. Let's see if we can get to the end of this little dungeon before we sign off. We'll have beaten 3 bosses tonight. How cool is that? Funny how countries decimated by communism that have only been free for 30 years now are so much better at serving the interests of their people. The victors of the Cold War, isn't it? Yeah. Well, there never had to be a readjustment for the United States in the West. Yeah, who are you, and what do you want from old Delilah? Seems she's the one we're seeking. We should ask her about leathergrass shoes. This is an odd question, but you seem to know a lot of random stuff. So, do you know what ancient Greeks looked like? For my book, I need to know if they were white or dark-skinned. Is this a trick question? They looked Mediterranean. Their skin was darker than mine. I mean, it was dark. If you're okay, there's Northern Europeans, right? Like, we have light hair and light skin and light eyes. They had dark eyes and dark hair. Their skin was not black. Like, I wouldn't call it dark. It's darker, you know? Look at their pottery. They portray themselves on pottery. They don't have black skin on their pottery. It's like black pots with skin that's lighter than that. So they had tan skin. You know, they're Mediterranean. They look like Greek people today do, I'm sure. I'm sure modern Greeks do not look that different from ancient Greeks. Turnip-squeezing bashy books like you, the four wizards of legend? Ha! I don't believe it, but no matter. These are the leather-grass shoes you seek. Here, catch! Watch out! It was a bomb. You, I thought you'd already gone back to town. How did you know those shoes were fake? We only wanted to help you out. We've seen leathergrass shoes before, and those didn't look anything like him. Delilah, those four are the real legendary warriors. Delilah, give them the leathergrass shoes. Well, if it's you asking, I don't have much choice, do I? Fine, take them. Obtained leathergrass shoes. Alright, now we can cross the bottomless bog. Thank you for coming this far to help us after all you've been through. Don't mention it, ha 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 ha. Come, let's go back. Hold on to me and I'll cast teleport. Off we go. I mean, people in Greece like to spend a lot of time outside. I mean, in the winter, your skin would get lighter. In the summer, it'd be darker. A fisherman probably has darker skin than a noble who doesn't spend his time outdoors. Seems like obvious to me. They probably didn't look that different. It's like, hey, now there are populations that in the ancient times probably looked different, like in India. So India has multiple genetic populations in it. And they had at one point this Aryan invasion, these people that came from like Iran, that they called Aryans. Lighter skinned people conquered India. So there's a range of skin tones in India, but ancient Indians were probably universally darker than modern Indians because of migration and things like that, changing the genetic makeup of the subcontinent of India. You know, here's a weird thing too, is like, you know, Mongolians are basically white. So they have epicanthal folds on their eyes, which makes them look Asian, East Asian. But their skin tone is as bright white as a Russian's because they're really far north. They live in a cold environment, so they have lighter skin. Most Japanese people have fairly light colored skin. They would qualify as white if you weren't looking at their, you know, their ethnic features on their face. You would just think that they're white. It's an interesting thing to think about. Big Brother America is all the world needs. All right, I'm going to call it here because it's getting late and I need to go to bed. And I know my kids who went to sleep early are going to be up early as well. They got up early at like 6 a.m. today, so I need to go to bed. I am trying to get so the hardback. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off real quick. Hardback of Water of Awakening is available, so you can get this in hardback now. Pretty cool. And I'm going to have the hardback of Needle Ash out in the next day or two, just as soon as I can get a couple of formatting things fixed so that it can actually look good and look appropriate. It's going to look really good. It's going to look as good as this one. Nice and shiny, laminate hardback. You know, it'll look nice. Basically be like a nice little textbook quality. It kind of creaks a little bit, so I'm overall satisfied with the quality of the hardbacks, and I think there could be a good size, and so I'll work on getting all of my bigger books in hardback, and I think it looks really good, so you can look out for that. And I don't know, what are my other books here? Keys to Prolific Creativity. You can listen to the free audiobook for this one on the channel. City of Silver, Tyrant's Gallow. I'm going to have book 3 of this. I'm trying to do that one next, so that one will come out. And then we'll have book 3 of the Eternal Dream series. So thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I appreciate the super chats as well. So I hope you guys will have a great day, and I will see you next time. Keep working, keep practicing, keep up the good fight. Keep working out and eating right. I guess my last parting shot. Keeping your body healthy will keep your mind focused and healthy and keep you well adjusted. So if you can fix something about your body, if you feel like your body's like, you're kind of falling off with your health, fix one thing about your health, you'll probably feel a lot better about everything. So I was just thinking about that earlier today, and so that's my little parting shot. Have a great one, and I'll see you next time.